Right, today we're going to be talking about SpeedTree trees, and we're going to be taking a look at how to create something like this, or close to, or similar to this. I'm going to start with an empty SpeedTree project. I'm using SpeedTree version 8.3.1, the UE4 subscription edition. Quick look at my material setup. I've got a few materials here, a couple of barks, a couple of leaves, leaf material. I'm not going to go over the material setup in detail because I've done this before. So these materials are atlases that are comprised of multiple meshes, or card meshes, or leaf meshes, whatever you want to call this. They call these cutouts, leaf cutouts. And I've showed how to create these in previous tutorials, including their level of detail. So you can see the high, the medium, and the low. The low, the medium, and then the high level of detail, or topology. So we'll be using these materials that I've already created here. I'm not going to be creating them again. So let's just start by a couple of ways that you could do this. You could use the if you press Control N or start a new project, you could use one of these samples that are included with SpeedTree and just change them, change some values, and then randomize them. And that's basically what I've done. I've created quite a few. You can see at the bottom here quite a few different kinds of trees, different looking trees. I've created snowy trees and normal green trees. I'm not going to go over how to do all of those. You'll need to play with those settings yourself and figure it out for yourself, because the next video that I want to do is going to be about procedural foliage generation in Unreal Engine. So this is specifically looking at how you could create a tree that could be used in Unreal Engine's procedural foliage generation, or you could even paint it on. So you can have a forest of these. So they will be optimized. They will contain level of detail, and they will be targeting high-end PCs. We're not going to be targeting low, mid-range, or low to medium spec. So I'm running these on a GTX 1080, and that's the hardware I'd be targeting. So this tree here it's not going to be a hero tree, so it's not going to have like hundreds of thousands of polygons. But you should have some kind of budget when you're creating forests per tree. So I typically try and keep it below at least 50,000 polygons. Right, let's continue. So I'm just starting out with the normal, the default trunk, the default tree that you get. I haven't made any changes here, so it's just like opening up a new SpeedTree. Then I'm just going to start by adding a trunk. And then the first thing I want to do here, under skin, here where it says radius, there's a graph here that I want to flatten. So I'm going to flatten this quite a bit. So I'm getting more, as you can see, as I'm sliding this, the tree goes thinner or thicker near the top, near the end. So I'm telling it I want a thicker tree near the top, because I don't like these really thin skinny trees, trunks. Then the next thing I want to do, I don't think I'm going to be changing anything here, is under segments. I want to just set the accuracy here to 100. And I'm going to set the optimization. Currently we got 520 triangles for a trunk. It's not even, the word high wouldn't start to describe how many triangles that is for a trunk. So I'm going to put the optimization up to 0.5, and now we have 20 triangles for the trunk, that's fine. You can see the trunk doesn't have to look super smooth either. Well, I don't want it to. I'm just going to set it to use bark 1. You can see here the different kind of bark materials. There's 2. Those go nice with something like more like a needly type Christmas tree. So I'm just going to stick to bark 1. You can see there's some repetition here. You could go in and play with the UV settings if you want. I'm not going to do that now. I'm also not going to cap off the ends because I don't care. I just don't care about the caps. They're not, seriously not important. Most of the time you won't see them anyway. And if someone does see them, I'm like, okay. I'm not trying to create the most realistic tree. I just want to create a tree in game that at least the player can see, oh yeah, that's a tree. It's moving in the wind, it's got vertex animation. Yeah, it's a tree. It's got collision on it. Well, it will have, but we're not going to be creating collision here in SpeedTree because I'd rather create the collision in Unreal Engine. It's far more efficient for me than I found. Okay, so now I've got a trunk. It's got 20 triangles on it. That's great. Let's move on. The next thing I'm going to add are big branches. And the first thing you'll see is now our poly count jumped up to 23,000. Obviously that's way too many. Let's start making some changes here. I'm going to start under generation and just make sure my mode is set to interval. Frequency and count, I'm going to drop them down 3.3, and now we're still in the high 20s. My first I'm going to make this 0.12, and my last I'm going to make this 0.9. So the first just says the closer this becomes to 0. So this first is with relation to the bottom or the base of the tree. How close to the bottom of the base do you want branches to start growing, and last is the opposite. So how do you want branches to grow near the end of the trunk? So I'm not growing right at the tip. And then there's another thing I want to do here is I want to this extend parent here. I want to make this any, so it'll extend the tip of the trunk here. Now these values that you change here, this frequency and count, will affect your poly count or triangle count dramatically. So you need to find a balance between the systems that you're trying to target, or the platforms that you're trying to target, and your polygon budget versus the look. Because the lower this is, the less branches you're going to have, right? And then the higher this is, the more branches you're going to have, but then your poly count is going to grow exponentially. Well, I guess linearly. It's not really exponentially. All right. The next change I want to make is I just want to take a look at under the skin section here. I want to take a look at the radius here. I want to flatten this graph as well a little bit, so these branches are not so thin near the end. I don't want these big branches to be so thin near the end. And then let's jump on over to the segments. So I'm going to make the accuracy 100 here. And the optimization, I'm going to make this 0.5. And now we've basically half the triangles from 30 to 15. And the next move, I want to zero out absolute, and I'll leave relative at 2 for now. But to give you an example of what this does, this is on relative 2. If I make relative 1, you get a very angled branch, which would be okay. You know, if you're targeting maybe lower spec machines, or if you just want a bigger forest where you can render more trees, this would be okay. When we start putting leaves on here, we're going to play with these settings again a little bit. For now, I'm going to leave it at 2. So you just get a little bit more of a fuller branch, but it's still very low poly. And when I mean low poly, it's lower than what it would have been. So now we're sitting at, for the big branches, 8,000 polys. So we came down from 30,000 to 8,000. No, 9,000. So we managed to lose or shave off 20. And once again, I don't have any caps, so you can see holes here. And that's fine. That's what I want. I don't care about caps. You can add caps. It almost makes no difference. Your leaves are going to be covering up most of this anyway, so your player won't really see this. And when they do see it, they're going to see through it to the other side, and they'll see leaves. It's not like you're going to need these for constructive solid geometry, you know, to do operations like Boolean and things like that. The only time where this, could be a potential issue is if you're doing things like pre-computed lighting using constructive solid geometry. What's the right word? Like algorithms or whatever, where if you have a light leak um, hitting the wrong end of a polygon, then you could potentially have an endless light bake or something like that. I don't know if that's in the old engines. That was a thing, but it's not a thing anymore. It hasn't been for a long time. Unreal Engine certainly won't have a problem with, even if you're using static lighting to bake out static lighting on a tree that has holes in it. It's fine. Right, so now you have your branches here that have caps. They don't have caps. Now you have your branches here. The next thing I want to change is nothing. We want to add the little branches now. And immediately you can see they've jumped up. Now we're at 70,000 triangles. Just from adding those little branches. That's obviously way too many. So the first thing I want to do here is jump on over to the generation. And I'm going to bring the count down here to 2. Now we're at 44. It's still... So now we're at 44,000. That's still not enough. And then I'm just going to drop this down to 0.1 because I want them a little bit closer near the bottom of the branch. And then I'll leave that at 0.9. The next thing I want to do is jump on over to segments. So make sure I didn't miss anything here that I may have wanted to change. I don't think so. Don't think I'm going to be making any further changes to the spine there. Let's hop on over to the segments. I'm going to set the accuracy. My neighbors decided to drill today. It's extremely annoying. I don't know how loud this is going to be, but it's getting annoying cutting this the whole time. Cutting it out of the video, it's going to be too much effort. All right, so well, it doesn't look like it's picking it up, so that's good. Right, so the next thing I'm going to change is I'm not actually changing the absolute or the relative. I'm leaving that. I'm going to hit the optimization here at 0.5. Now we've dropped down to 27,000. I'm changing the absolute here to 0 and then the relative to 2. And now we're back down to a decent 10,000. And then taking a look at these guys. Let's focus on one of these guys quickly. So this is pretty good detail, and if you drop your relative down to 1, it's still not bad. You could get away with that. You could definitely get away with that. Yeah, it's fun. All right. So currently we're sitting at just under 20,000. If I drop that down to 1, I can lose 5,000 polys there, and if I drop that down to 1, I lose quite a bit more, about another 5,000. So from 20,000 we can half it again to 10,000, which is pretty cool. That's not a bad optimization to make. I would say drop down the little branches to 1 for starters, and then depending on which hardware, if you're going to be placing thousands of these in your level, it might be just better to drop this down to 1 as well for the relative. I'm going to leave it where it is for now. Then the next thing we're going to add is we're going to add some leaves. Sometimes you add your leaves and then they're not visible. Just press 1 with your focus in the window here, because sometimes they're not visible. For the leaves, I'm going to set the generation to interval, because I want them at an interval spread across the branch. It's frequency to 2, count 3. I'm going to leave that. First and last here in this case, I'm going to leave them at 0 to 1. Then I'm going to hop on over to the skin. I'm going to set the size to 8. I'm going to set the leaf mesh I'm going to use this leaf 2 for now. It's going to look a little weird for a little bit until we fix it. So I'm going to start by setting the fold to negative 0.5 and the curl to negative 0.2. 1, 2. And how I got to those values are, you can see what the fold does. If you just see how the leaf mesh folds in towards itself, and then curls it, just curls it in and out. So those are just the values that I chose that I want to use. And then the next thing that I want to do is under orientation. I want to change the sky influence here to 0.7 and the alignment here to 0.4. And what this does, the sky influence is how much does the sky influence these leaf meshes, and then the alignment is how are they aligned with relation to their parent. And these are just values that I found that I like. What I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to duplicate this and also attach it to the big branch. And now we've got this isn't the worst tree in the world. It's also not the best tree in the world, but it looks nice. It looks right. I'm going to press O for generating the ambient occlusion. And then I'm just pressing 7 to make sure I don't have any collision objects set. I don't want collision objects here. And then the next thing I want to do is, let's quickly optimize this for level of detail. So I would go under LOD. I would let's do the branches level of detail. Sorry, not the leaf meshes. So I want to drop this graph here down for radial segments. In other words, the higher the level of detail becomes, the lower resolution radial I want. And then the same for the length segments. I'll just halve that. And then I'll test the level of detail here quickly. So we've gone from 20,000 to just over 2,000. Which is pretty cool. And then the very last LOD, I'm going to be generating a billboard, which will then be something like 36 vertices. So that will typically cover your backgrounds, which are really far away. And they still have a little bit of variance on them, because I normally set the variance here on the leaf meshes. So you do get a little bit of color variance. And I can also show how to do a quick, let's just do the wind quickly. I'm just hitting the wind wizard, stately shade tree, and I'm setting this to large floppy leaves. And then I don't like the animation on this. For me, it's moving way too much when the gust blows. Now some people don't mind that. I don't like that. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be just under selecting both of the leaf meshes, dropping the effect of the wind down to 0.3, and I'm going to be doing the same for the branches. I have to do it under animation. And then for this guy here, I'm just going to drop it down to 0.2. And now the wind doesn't affect it that much, and that's it. So if we take a look at the segments, so the little branches segments, I've dropped their relative down to 1, and that's what I was talking about. You can't really see that your branches don't have caps. It's not a thing you're going to see, even if you're looking at the top view, and most of the time, if you're going to be looking at the top view, like let's say you're flying or whatever, you're going to be hitting a slightly lower LOD. It's going to look something like that. And then regarding the LOD for the leaf meshes, they just normally go down in mesh index. Meaning the higher level of detail, the lower geometry mesh it will use in your cutout here. So on a high level of detail, it will use this. Well, on a low level of detail, 0, which is your highest resolution, you want to see the most geometry, so it'll use this, and on the lowest it'll use the low one here. So that's pretty cool already. Right, the next thing I want to do is just quickly play around with some leaves. You could swap these out, play with different leaf materials. Not crazy about this leaf. This is more almost like for a bushy tree. This one is pretty, it's okay. This one also not great for what I want to do here, but this one works pretty good. This is also a type of I don't know, like a needly. And then you can always come in here and you can hit randomize a few times until to create some different variants of those same trees. And talking about variants, all of these settings that we've changed, it's also a good idea to come in and just set their random values a little bit. Especially here when it comes to the orientation. You can always just pop this up a little bit. Sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't. And then you can also come in here and do your break chance. Let's see, where's that under spine? Make your break chance like 0.2. So your break chance is how likely are your branches to have contain breaks in them. Like you can see here, I've just hidden the leaves there, so you can see what happens. The higher the break chance, the more broken branches you have. Now we just made a couple of changes there, and now we've already optimized it a little bit further. Now suddenly we're sitting at 15,000 from 20,000, but yeah, we could easily optimize that further by dropping this down more. Well, that didn't make such a huge change. Oh yeah, there we go. We were sitting at 20. Okay, so anyway, so let's export this. So those leaves are, the randomness is a little bit annoying, so I'm just going to bring this down to 0.1. Sometimes 0.2 is just a little bit too strong. Yeah, something like that. I'm just going to put this in my same folder I'm working with. I'm choosing LODs and billboard. Variations, seam lengths, choosing non-wrapping. And then I'm going to show you a little bit of a cheaty way to create a snowy type tree or bush. The way that I use it seems to work okay. So let's bring this into Unreal Engine quickly. So I've exported that to the temp drive. And you just need to grab the .st file and bring that in. I will not be including collision. I'm going to ask for materials. I'm going to include subsurface and vertex processing for the wind animation. I've had mixed results with the subsurface. For me, it doesn't always look so great. Once it's imported, the first thing I want to do is obviously just check it. And it's the level of detail is looking a little bit weird. But yeah, I mean, this is the tree I created. I just want to set up collision here, but I only want collision on the bark, not on the leaves. And then I want to set the level of detail screen size values differently. I don't like the defaults that they're using. These just work better for me. And I'm just going to drop it in here. And just jump in quickly. And just show my... First of all, check it performance-wise. You can see there's a little bit of white there. But all in all, it doesn't look horrible. And then you should be able to see the transitions there for the level of detail. Well, that tree's quite a bit smaller than the ones I usually make. Interesting. Oops. Let's go back. And the transition is really nice. They're using screen door fade, which looks really cool. SpeedTree screen door fade, which you can see there. Not overly crazy about this this leaf material here. Looks a little weird, but I mean it does the job. We can try it with the other material, but what I want to rather do quickly, just to show you a little trick that I started playing with, or trying. Use your ambient occlusion channel, pop that into your color, and then what's going to happen is, if you also use subsurface at the bottom of your leaves, it's going to be green, and at the top it's going to be green, to simulate snow. So let's test that theory. I'm going to save this. I'm going to export it to a new folder here. I'll give it a different name, choosing all the same options again. Then I'm just going to create another folder here. And I'll be importing this guy in here. Okay, materials, subsurface, vertex processing. It's actually still the same tree asset, so I could just have changed the materials, but it doesn't have to be. You could hit some random randomize there and get a different looking tree in there as well. So the first thing I want to do here is just quickly do the collision again. And just quickly do the LOD. Well, there are other ways to create snowy trees as well, where you have particles and things like that. and they're all fine. I mean, there's different ways to do different things. There's not just one way to do everything. So this is what I was talking about. If you look from the bottom of the tree, it looks like it's green, and if you look from the top, it's going to look like it's snowy. So where this really works well is like if you have a snowy environment. Let's see if we can quickly hop on over here where we have a snowy environment like this. It can really help sell the environment a little bit. And I do have some green in here too. That's not accidental. That's done on purpose. But I'm not going to show this these tools in this video. That's going to be for the next video. And I think that's going to wrap it up for now. Yeah, there we go. See, where's my thing here? Yeah, cool. Thanks for watching.